This is Michelle Rumschlag, Naturalist, and welcome to Nature's Virtual Classroom. So today's topic is going to be animal tracks. So when we're outside into the woods or into the prairie, sometimes we don't always see animals. So how do we know they've been there? Well, they leave us signs. Maybe it's some droppings. Maybe it's a feather. Maybe it's leftover food that they haven't finished. So there's many different ways we can tell an animal's been there. Today, I just want to focus on animal tracks. So what are we looking at when we see a track? Well, let's turn into nature detectives and let's see what that animal's been doing. And I'm going to use my cow puppet to kind of help me with that. So where are you finding them? Well, the best place to find animal tracks is going to be somewhere the animal's foot can kind of sink into. So think mud, sand, or snow. So if it's a hard surface, you're probably not going to find an animal track there. Now, once you find those tracks, you can figure out maybe where they're going. See which way their toes are pointing and follow them that way. How are they moving? Are they walking? Are they bounding? Are they running? So you can tell that by how far apart those tracks are. Are there two sets? Maybe they have a friend, maybe they're chasing somebody, so we'll use our pig puppet here. And you'll be able to tell that if they're the same track and they're moving along, or two different tracks like our cow and our pig would have. Now you also wanted to take notice of what habitat you're in. So obviously if you're finding farm animal tracks, you're going to be near pasture or near farm. If you're going to be near water, you might be more likely to find tracks of maybe a raccoon or a beaver or a muskrat than maybe say in a prairie where those animals probably wouldn't be found too often. What season is it? Remember, in wintertime, some animals hibernate. So you're never going to find woodchuck tracks in the wintertime because they're sleeping in their burrow. So let's talk about how we can start differentiating between the different tracks. Well, I've got my animal friends here, my farm animal friends. And so the first one is hooves compared to paws. So obviously our cow and our pig have different kinds of hooves. Well, the only native wild animal that has hooves is the white-tailed deer. And I have some rubber tracks of what they look like. And I'll have these kind of throughout my talk. And we'll let you know later on of where you can purchase these if you want to get some. So the white-tailed deer is our only native hoofed animal. Other examples would be the elk and the moose, and we either don't have them here anymore like the elk, or the moose don't live here at all. So if you're finding a hoof, most likely the deer, obviously with the toes pointing frontward, you can tell where it's going. And if it's a different kind of hoof, maybe you're seeing a horse or a cow or some other type of farm animal. Now we're going to start getting into how to differentiate between the different mammal tracks. So we know lots of animals will leave tracks like birds and reptiles and amphibians, but I'm just focusing on the mammals. So let's get into paws, because that's what you're going to see with most mammal tracks. So the first group I want to kind of break down is if you're seeing claws or no claws. So if you're seeing one with no claws, it's going to be for your feline. So our bobcat puppet here, and I happen to have a cougar track to kind of show you again, and these are life size and what they look like. So with cats, of course, they have their claws retracted back and they only bring them out when they need to use them. So when they're walking, they're not leaving any claw marks on there. Now, you might not see some of them with the other animals, but you're definitely not going to see them with the canines, or excuse me, the feline track here. So let's get into our canines. So if you're seeing a larger track out in the woods or on the trail, it's going to be your domestic dog, or it would be a wolf, which again, we don't have in Ohio anymore, so it's going to be your larger dog breeds. So here is what a wolf track looks like. And you can see these claws that are present here. And if the substrate of the ground is right, you will also see those claw marks. Now, all canines have 4 toes, so you're going to see that when you're looking at the track. So again, if it's really large, not a wolf, probably just somebody's pet. The 2 canine ones we are going to see are foxes and coyotes. So we have our fox puppet, and then I want to show you its track here. And it might be hard to tell apart fox from coyote when you're looking at them. You might have to look for other signs. Maybe you've been seeing them in the area or hearing them, but this gives you an idea of kind of what they look like. And it's only really about 1.5 inches to 2 inches kind of across there or in diameter, so not very large. Again, foxes only weigh about 10 to 13 pounds, so they're a smaller dog. So I want to talk about the coyote a little bit more and show its tracks. So again, 4 toes on both feet. Some animals might have different numbers of toes. And the front paw, which is I have right here, is smaller than the back paw. And that's true for some different animals. So as you're walking along, again, maybe you might be able to tell the difference on that, or you might just be able to tell that I have a canine kind of in my area. Now let's get into the number of toes that the different animals have. Sometimes this might be hard to see when they're making the track, but I want to let you know that different animals have different numbers of toes. So let's start with our rabbits, or our eastern cottontails. So these are animals that are in our area that have more toes on their front feet than they do on their back feet. So I do have, again, the rubber tracks, and you can see obviously the long back foot there. Now the back foot only has 4 toes, and the smaller front foot has 5 toes. So again, that's different, more in the front than it does on the back. So that is your cottontail rabbit. Again, it has to be in an area where its foot can sink down, so you're not always going to see it maybe during the warmer parts of the year, but the winter you're definitely going to find your rabbit tracks. Another one you might see in the winter are the squirrels. Now the squirrels are just opposite of the rabbit. So they have 4 in the front, a smaller foot, and then here's a picture, or I guess the track, of their back foot. So they have 5 toes in the back. So 4 in the front, 5 in the back for squirrels. Now these are also ones that you see in the wintertime. And again, when they're leaving them in the snow and maybe the snow is melted, you're not going to be able to go up and count the number of toes to see if you're finding a squirrel track or a rabbit track. So I have a little trick to kind of help you out with that. So when you can tell the large back feet from the front feet when you're looking at those set of tracks. And it depends on the placement of the front feet if you have a squirrel or if you have a rabbit. So if it's a squirrel, those feet are kind of side by side when they're leaving the track marks. So I think S for squirrel, S for side by side. That's a squirrel set. If you're looking at a rabbit track, their front feet are separate from each other. So they're kind of apart like this. So squirrels are side by side. If they're altered a little away from each other, that's going to be your rabbit tracks. So a little hint for winter, hopefully we're going to get some snow that you'll be able to see those tracks later on this year. So some other animals that are leaving winter tracks are our bird friends. So we have our great horned owl here that might leave wing marks. So it's coming down to get a mouse or a squirrel or something, and as it lands in the snow, it's going to use those large wings to kind of just land and then fly away. So any wing mark, you have a bird friend. There's also animals leaving tail marks. Again, we have our turkey friend here. As it's walking, it might drag its tail in the back, or mice. Now mice are pretty neat to find in the snow, and you usually have to go out right after the snow has just fallen. So of course, very small foot tracks, but a little line in between them because it's dragging its tail. So again, get out all times of year to see if you can find those animal tracks. Now we're on to a group of animals that is like us with their number of toes. So they have 5 toes on their front feet and also their back feet. Of course, we don't have toes, we have fingers, but we have 5 on the front and 5 on our back feet. So these 3 animals are very common in our area. They're all nocturnal animals, so maybe you're not seeing them as often. And they're all omnivores, so they're eating plants and animals. So they have a lot of things in common. So our first one is our striped skunk. So they have the smallest paws of the 3 that we're talking about. And the front foot on all of these animals is smaller than the back foot. You're also seeing their claws. Now with skunk feet, again, it might be hard to see these tracks. I haven't seen them too often. Maybe you're going to find them in the snow. All 3 of these are active during the winter time. When I notice that a skunk's been around, usually it's digging in the grass area of a trail because they're looking for grubs and things that are in the ground. So if you're seeing that, maybe you look and see if you can find some of those tracks. Of course, we know if they've been around by their smell, So we know that they've been there. Our next one is the Virginia opossum. So here we have our mom with her baby on her back there. And the front paw is smaller than the back paw. And this one's neat that if you find it in the winter time, that when they make their track in the snow, it almost looks like a star. So think if your hand spread out and you put it in, it might have that kind of star shape. So that's their front paw. Their back paw is a lot different. So it's a lot longer, and then it also has almost like a thumb on their back foot, just like you and I have a thumb that we use. So they're using it kind of the same way for grasping and holding things when they're climbing, and that extra tool just when they're maneuvering things. So that is your possum back foot. Again, one of the few animals that has that thumb a part of its feet. And our last one is our raccoon. So very common in our area. I think this animal is the track that you're going to see the most, especially if you're near a water area, in the mud. You know, the raccoon likes to eat a lot of the animals that live in those water areas. So we have the back foot and then also the front foot. So again, the smaller front foot, you can see there, and then the longer back foot with those toes. Now it's almost like they have fingers, just the way they can maneuver and grab onto different things. One thing is that raccoons kind of wash their food, but they're very tactile though. They just like to feel things. So it's not necessarily them washing it, they're just getting a good sense of what they are holding on to. So if you're near, again, any kind of mud or water and you see, count the toes, if you see 5, you're probably looking at the raccoon. Now we're in the part of the program where we talk about the supplies that I've used and how you can get them at home or maybe make some yourself. So it's all been about animal tracks. So I wanted to show you, even though we focus mainly on mammals, that there are other animals that really make tracks. So we have, you can get a snapping turtle one, and maybe you've never thought about other animals making tracks, but if they're near the water or different spots, you might find the turtle track. We also have a frog. And again, we're going to put on the websites at the end of the presentation here that you can find these online. And then some of our bird friends. So we have a great blue heron, of course having those long toes. Maybe you don't always see their feet because they're always wading in water, but this is what their track would look like. And then we have a bald eagle. So again, you can see the large claws and the more muscular foot compared to what the great blue heron had. And then our last one is a crow. So again, they don't have tracks usually for all different kinds of birds, but there is a good selection, and we have a variety here that we use in many of our programs. Another thing that we use to show the different animal tracks are some books. And so there's one called Mammal Tracks, and again, we'll put the website and the information about the book on there. But what's really neat is it shows life-size tracks. So we were talking about the squirrels and the rabbits, and you can see what they look like compared to each other and actual sizes. And then there's also information in here of how they're walking. So if they're walking, if they're bounding, if they're jumping, and how they're moving and how their tracks might look. So there's one that has animal tracks, and there's also a version that has tracks and scat if you'd like to pick that up. Another thing we've used for our summer camp participants is we had these fun bandanas made. And so we had ours made with scat tracks and scat. So it's kind of a fun little, sometimes they're game boards or a scavenger hunt, and then we got it with our logo on there. So maybe this is something that you might want to invest in for your church group or somebody. So again, we usually do t-shirts, but we want to do something else, a little fun for our camp people. So these are different things you can get online and find. So how do you make ones on your own? Well, first you need to find the tracks. So maybe you know a great place you can find them where there's a water area or there's mud. So once you find that track, or maybe it's been hardened, the mud is dried up and it's a hard track in the dirt. Well, you can get some plaster of Paris and you can fill in those tracks. And we have some examples of ones we did many years ago here. So you can pour it in, just kind of follow the instructions that you have with the plaster of Paris, and then you've got your own animal track. Another thing you can do is just kind of observation. So besides just going out and hiking and walking the trails, if you know an area where you have animals, and if it's more of a kind of hard surface where it's either pavement or usually dirt, put out some seeds, put something out, maybe some rotten fruit, and then spread flour around it. And then check it the next day. So then you'd be able to tell if there's animal movement in that flour, if you've seen some animals there. Well, I want to thank you for joining us for our first Nature's virtual classroom. And we're going to wrap up our series for this fall, but stay tuned. We're going to have some here in the near future during the holiday break and also into winter in January and February. Now, for some of you older folks, if you want to learn more about history, we have a new series coming up that's called History How-Tos. And so there are going to be some instructional videos, and we're going to make some different things together. So our first one is going to highlight lemon balm, and we're going to make lemon balm bread. And these are going to take place at our 1847 McInnes house. So it's a little different that you'll still need to register, but then there'll be some supplies that you'll have to come to the office to pick up. And then we'll have 2 days of the video being shown and kind of going through how to make whatever we're making that time. So for the first one, it will take place on Thursday, October 8th and Friday, October 9th. So you'll need to register by Tuesday, October 6th. And that'll give you time to come to the office and pick up your supplies, which will be lemon balm. So you'll learn all about what lemon balm is, the uses the pioneers would have had, and then we're going to bake some bread together. So don't miss out on that. Again, for more information, always check out our website at hancockparts.com. Thanks for joining me, and have a great day.